Here is a full 1,400-word emotional, cinematic, VIP story based on your title. Crafted exactly in the style you like: smooth, dramatic, realistic, and perfect for YouTube voiceover after. The story you'll find description, and SEO keywords. The music was soft, warm, and full of joy, the kind of melody that wrapped around people like a blanket. In the backyard of the Jefferson home, string lights glowed gold against the evening sky, and guests laughed as they waited for the bride and groom to take the floor for their first dance. It was a small wedding. Intimate, beautiful, and completely full of love. Amara, the bride, stood by the garden arch, her white dress shimmering like a moonlit wave. Tears were already in her eyes, not from sadness but from gratitude. She had waited her whole life for a love like this, a love as steady as the man she was about to marry. That man, Elijah Thompson, stood near the DJ, adjusting his sleeves. He was calm, tall, handsome, someone who carried authority without needing to raise his voice. He smiled at the sight of Amara waving at him, her joy radiating across the lawn. He was ready to be a husband, ready to start a new life. But happiness, black happiness, often had a way of drawing the wrong kind of attention. And tonight, someone was watching. From the second-floor window next door, a pair of narrowed eyes glared through blinds. The woman behind them was Linda Matthews, and self-righteous in a way that came from being listened to her entire life. She had complained about everything since Amara's family moved in months ago: the lawn, the music, the cars, the guests, the traffic, the laughter. Tonight, she fixated on the wedding celebration. With a growing scowl, "I've had enough," she snapped under her breath. She reached for her phone and dialed 911. "There's a loud gathering next door," she said dramatically. "A disturbance. I think something dangerous might be happening." It was a lie, but she said it anyway, because she could, because they were black, because she believed her word carried more truth than their joy. Minutes later, as the ceremony transitioned into dancing, the distant sound of sirens quietly crept toward the celebration. At first, no one noticed. The children were blowing bubbles, the older guests were taking photos, and the newlyweds were swaying softly to an R&B love song, forehead to forehead, smiling like nothing else existed. But Amara's father, a military veteran with sharp instincts, turned toward the gate with a frown. "What on earth?" he whispered. Red and blue lights flashed through the fence. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Music dimmed. Mothers instinctively pulled their kids closer. The air shifted, joy turning into fear in a single breath. The gate opened. 3 police officers stepped inside, hands on their belts, scanning the crowd with cautious suspicion. A hush fell over the wedding. Amara squeezed Elijah's hand. "Baby, what's happening?" Elijah inhaled slowly. "Someone called the cops." A few guests whispered anxiously. "This is a wedding. Who would do that? Why are they here? Like it's a crime scene." "Lord, please don't let this ruin their night." The lead officer approached. "We received a report of a disturbance here. Loud noise, suspicious activity." Amara's voice trembled. "Suspicious? This is our wedding." The officer didn't soften. "We still have to check it out, ma'am." Other officers began approaching guests, asking questions. Fear rippled through the backyard, not because anyone was guilty, but because history taught them to be cautious even when innocent. Elijah felt something break inside him. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not tonight. Not to Amara, not to their families. He looked up at the house next door. Linda Matthews stood at her window, arms folded smugly, watching everything like she was enjoying front row seats to a show she orchestrated. Elijah clenched his jaw. That was enough. With calm, deliberate steps, he walked toward the officers. His groomsman whispered urgently, "Elijah, don't, man, be careful, let the adults handle it." But Elijah simply lifted a hand. "It's all right." He reached the lead officer, who eyed him suspiciously. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some ID." Elijah held his gaze. "You want ID?" "Yes." The wedding guests watched, breath held. Amara whispered, "Please, God." Elijah slowly reached into his inner jacket pocket, not for his wallet, but for a leather badge holder. He flipped it open. The gold shield gleamed under the string lights. "Detective Elijah Thompson, Los Angeles Police Department, Homicide Division." The officer's jaw dropped. His hand fell away from his holster. Instantly, the other officers froze. The guests gasped. And from the window next door, Linda Matthews' face went pale, drained of every ounce of confidence she thought she had. Elijah's voice was calm, controlled, professional. "I'm off duty today. It's my wedding. And this," he gestured around them, "is not a disturbance. It's a family celebration." The lead officer swallowed hard. "Detective, we didn't know. You didn't ask," Elijah replied. There was no anger in his voice, just disappointment, a quiet, piercing disappointment. "We received a complaint," the officer said weakly. "We had to respond." Elijah nodded. "And I respect that. But look around you. Does this look like danger? Suspicious activity? Or does it look like a neighbor making a bogus call because she was bothered by black people celebrating?" One officer lowered his head. Another whispered, "Congratulations on your wedding." "Sir, thank you," Elijah replied softly. He closed his badge holder, slid it back into his jacket, and stepped closer to the lead officer. If the caller is who I think it is, let her know that filing false reports is a misdemeanor, and let her know I'll be stopping by tomorrow to have a conversation about accountability." The officer nodded quickly. "Understood, detective." They turned and exited the yard, their tension replaced with embarrassment. The moment the gate closed, the entire wedding exhaled as one. Children came out from hiding. Behind chairs, adults wiped tears from their eyes. Amara rushed into Elijah's arms, voice trembling. "You handled that like an angel, but I swear my heart stopped." He held her tighter. They weren't going to hurt anyone. Not tonight. Not on our day. Her father stepped forward, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's my son-in-law." Laughter returned slowly at first, then spreading through the crowd like sunlight, breaking through clouds after a storm. The music played again. Guests danced with more joy than before, as if reclaiming the night, as if refusing to let one act of cruelty stain something sacred. But Linda Matthews never returned to the window, not after the officers spoke to her, not after she realized the man she tried to intimidate was one of the very people she expected to weaponize. She closed her blinds and stayed silent. For the rest of the night, that is, the wedding continued, Elijah and Amara finally took the floor for their first dance. Her head rested on his chest, and he whispered, "No matter what happens, we rise together." Tears filled her eyes again, but this time from love. Pure, unstoppable love, under the stars. Surrounded by family and resilience, they danced not just as newlyweds, but as a reminder that joy can survive anything, even hate, even fear, even false accusations, because joy, when protected, becomes unbreakable. By the end of the night, every guest knew they had witnessed something deeper than a wedding. They had witnessed dignity in the face of discrimination. Courage in the face of humiliation, and love powerful enough to silence anything designed to destroy it. Years later, people would still talk about that wedding, not because of the police call but because of how Elijah stood tall, calm, and unshakably proud, and how Amara held his hand, knowing she had married a man who would face the world fearlessly if it ever dared to threaten their peace. That night became a story passed down and their family told not with bitterness, but with triumph, a story that reminded everyone, never let anyone dim your joy. Moral of the story, no matter who tries to stop your happiness, stand tall. Your dignity, truth, and courage have more power than any prejudice, and love, real love always, wins in the end.